What is good, everybody, man? Welcome into the Blue Bloods, the Coach's Corner, Week 3 recap, man. The season in full swing right now, man. Listen, we got a lot to talk about. Listen, before the chat and people listening are like, you didn't listen to us. You asked us last week. We picked Sunday night. Listen, my guy, Coach Fred, he's got the conference play opens up. He's got to practice. Listen, they need to keep winning. They're on a win. Hey, got a big win this past weekend over McKinnell State. So, hey, we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. So, guys, we're going to be live Sunday night or Monday afternoon. It's just going to depend on Coach's schedule. Listen, it takes a lot of moving and shaking to make something like this happen. And hey, we're going to have me and Coach are going to have some big news probably next week. It's probably confirmed now. Want to get all the paperwork signed, but then me and Coach will probably have a big announcement next week that has to do with the website and moving forward what the Blue Bloods is going to be. But man, let's get right into it. Coach, how you feeling, man? Big win this past weekend. Only the second out of conference win for the SWAC this year.
Man, big. That was big. That was big. We needed that one in the worst way, getting ready to go into conference play versus a really good McNeese team. And it felt good to get that and be the only team to, again, have beat McNeese. And to do it twice in a row, man, it was even better. And defense played lights out. Offense, man, we started fast. Just a great feeling at the end of the day. Now it's done with that. On to the next.
I'm telling you guys, one of the biggest matchups this weekend is going to be the PV rushing attack versus that front seven of Alcorn's. Man, Alcorn's defense, Coach. I know you're a wide receiver guy, but man, that defense has been playing some ridiculous football this year for Alcorn.
Man, we go against it every day. Coach Thomas and the guys on that side have those guys playing really fast, really hard. Can do nothing but take the hats off to those kids. They just put their heads down and work. And that's, what Coach Thomas does, and they follow him. Been working pretty good, man.
Let's get into some storylines, Coach. Before we get into like the X's and O's, breaking down some of the biggest games this weekend, were there any storylines coming out of the weekend that you wanted to hit on?
Man, and I think we're going to get into it in the recap as well. But I think before we closed the last show, you talked about Sac being able to go up there to Stanford. Man, that was actually a pretty good game, great finish. That storyline in itself, I think, is just really huge. And then the fact that Miles almost pulled off another one, man, from the conference within, that I'm in, that was a good win for UAPB, a near miss. And then when you get into more of the conference, man, that Delta State, Mississippi Valley, I thought the line was a joke, like, it's going to change. But they knew something I didn't. Hats off to them with a big win. So to me, those three things across our landscape, to me, were pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm sorry. Like, if you're a D1, I get it. Valley's rebuilding. I loved what Wade talked about in his presser today in the SWAC teleconference. But if you're a Division I program, you can't let a D2 team beat you by 28 points.
Nah, you can't let them cover.
No, I mean, they were 25-point favorites, and everyone talked all week about how disrespectful that was and that at least cover it. Like, none of us were picking Valley for the win. Like, I don't think anyone picked Valley to win that game, but, man, you let them put up 35 points and hold you to a single touchdown on the day.
That's tough. And we all talk about a loss is a loss, a win is a win, but certain losses count even more than other losses. And that loss right there had to hurt because it was so publicized about the line and the whole nine.
Yeah, I think, building off of that, it's finally kind of getting to that point where conference plays firing up across the country. There's a few good out of conference games throughout the rest of the slate, but I got shout out to the guys over at the FCS fans Facebook page, man. They got the out of conference records per conference. And I think it's interesting to see, listen, no offense, the Pioneer League doesn't have scholarships. Their 1-18 record doesn't surprise me. I mean, they have no scholarships, but they do have 4 D2 losses, which is ridiculous. I mean, that's a lot of D2 losses. The NEC and Southland, though, especially the Southland, really surprised me. Coach, the Southland went 2-10 in out of conference play. One of those wins being Incarnate Word this past weekend over Abilene Christian. The SWAC 2-7, 3 D2 losses. The MEAC was 3-6 with 2 D2 losses. All 3 wins for the MEAC coming over CAA teams, though. That's the interesting thing, especially because the CAA went 13-5. So 3 of their 5 losses were to MEAC teams, but they've been killing the other out of conference teams.
And that in itself, because they lost a couple teams there, right? You know, that's huge. And again, like you said, man, the D2 losses, man, that's a tough blow to any conference, especially ours. And then especially with the one that was in state, that becomes tough. That's going to be really tough to get through with the recruiting on that end of the state. But, you know, the one conference boasts to be a pretty strong conference across, you know, 1AA. You can't have that kind of record, especially if you're not playing up in all your games, which they weren't. So
no. Yeah, because I mean the SWAC and MEAC, they weren't playing the Big Sky and VFC. Like there were none of those matchups. I mean, heck, even the Big South OVC, I don't think had a lot of SWAC MEAC matchups.
Yeah,
like the SWAC's wins have kind of, and it's crazy because take out the MEAC, the SWAC's only got one out of conference win, and it's you guys over McNeese last weekend. I mean, that's got to change. I mean, we talked about it this offseason, the SWAC out of conference struggles, but going into the season, me and you spoke about there was a lot of confidence in some of these games. Like everyone kind of thought the conference as a whole was going to take that step forward. It is not. And it shows again, man, like those out of conference games count eventually. Because let's just say this, Coach. FAMU's in the driver's seat. They have the win over Jackson. When it comes playoff time for Jackson, it's not only Jackson's schedule that matters. They're going to look at the SWAC and they're like, by the end of the year, let's say it's 2-10 out of conference. They're going to say, yeah, okay, Jackson went 9-2, but who did Jackson beat? Because all Jackson's opponents all got smashed in out of conference play.
Yep, the strength of the schedule, the strength of the conference schedule, all that's going to play in. And like you said, I mean, it becomes a deal of where, okay, you got all that, but then you had wins versus teams that had D2 losses. You had wins versus teams that lost to non-scholarship programs, you know, that kind of thing. All that plays. And like you said, it all goes back to scheduling. All goes back to scheduling.
Just to put it out there, the MVFC led all teams 17-5 in out of conference games, 1 FBS win. We talked about the CAA, the Big Sky 14-7 with 2 FBS upsets, and the Patriot League 10-6 with 1 FBS win. Of course, the Ivy League started last week. They went 5-3 out of conference in their first week.
And they started 2 weeks behind everybody. So, you know, again, would they have one more week of non-conference coming out? I think
no. A lot of their teams play conference games this weekend. There's a few that have out of conference, you know, squeezed in. But there's a lot of teams that start conference play with.
So that may change.
The thing with them with no postseason, they really don't care. Like the Ivy League, like I know people joke about the SWAC kind of living in their own bubble. The Ivy League is in their own, like they do not care. They go and play some out of conference games every once in a while. They win a good bit. They've had an above 500 record, I want to say, for like a few straight years now, but they don't really care what the rest of the country's doing.
No, it don't matter. We getting these books.
Exactly. Hey, and shout out to them. They're doing their thing. Coach, there's 2 other storylines I want to hit. One, man, I think it's safe to say, I know this might be an overreaction right now. It's week 3. I think there's an argument to be made. The best player in FCS football right now plays at Holy Cross and plays quarterback right now. Matthew Sluka is out there killing people this year. He led them to a win over Yale, 49-24, completed 23 of 30 pass attempts for 275 through the air, 4 passing touchdowns, and then led his team with 98 rushing yards and 2 more rushing touchdowns.
He's in the driver's seat.
Man, he is balling. And I mean, I just want to say this, no D2 games on the schedule. They've played Merrimack, who on paper was 1 game away from winning the NEC last year. They played Boston College and was 3 points away from pulling the upset, and then played Yale, who was voted the preseason favorites to win the Ivy League. So he's not playing just a bunch of scrubs. Like he's out there balling against really good teams.
And doing numbers. And doing
Oh,
numbers. Did decent numbers, above decent numbers versus BC, uh, who took Florida State to the wire. So, his numbers are legitimate numbers.
yeah. I mean, so this season, coach, he's completed 71% of his passes, almost 600 yards passing, 6 passing touchdowns, leads Holy Cross with 324 rushing yards, 4 rushing, and is averaging 7 yards per carry.
True dual threat. True dual threat.
Mm,
He's in the driver's seat right now. I think when you're talking about the 1AA Heisman, that award, and it goes back to a talk we had a few shows ago. Um, Now, does he have legitimate numbers to be placed in the Heisman conversation? I think he does, but will he? Playing at Holy Cross is not going to help. But his numbers are going to say that he is, should be in that conversation at least to start out.
he's playing at Holy Cross at the wrong time because if he was playing in the 80s, they had a guy who finished top 5 in the Heisman for 2 straight years in Lockbaum, who played both sides of the
Wow.
ball, of course. I mean, so Holy Cross has had 2 Heisman finalists, which I mean, but yeah, right now I don't think he's in the Heisman race. And Derek, I know I see you in the chat. We're talking FCS. We're not trying to compare him to Shador or Caleb Williams. Like we're talking Walter Payton numbers. So he's the best player in FCS right now. We're not trying to make that distinction right now. But and Timothy makes a good point because if you go watch the film, he plays every play like the defense disrespected him. I mean, he was out there trash talking Yale. Yale was getting the work every play. He was out there talking to a Yale player, and I was like, he plays so angry and so aggressive, and I love that from a quarterback because sometimes your quarterback isn't that guy. He's not the enforcer. When you got a quarterback who can ball out like that, and he's the enforcer, and he's out there shoving his head, getting hit and trying to truck people, that just brings a whole nother energy to that team.
I seen him play a little bit against BC, and I almost made the comparison out loud. And I'm going to knock on wood before I do it, but he gave me young Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football vibes. But it was genuine. It wasn't an act. It was who he is for his team, and that was one of those things that was really impressive that I got to see with him playing BC. He didn't care.
I think that's a good comparison. I think, he almost has like a little bit of like a Baker Mayfield build to him too, without the recklessness.
I didn't say Baker because I felt that Baker built himself off of Johnny.
Yeah, I feel you. So he's like the OG, like he's the man. Yeah, I like that. I like that. And I feel like he has, I feel like his personality compares more to like a Tebow more so than a Manziel, but I just don't think he's as big as Tebow. He's a little bit more,
Right.
he's got a little bit more twitch than Tebow. Tebow was just a bruiser, man. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
he would bully you.
Yeah, he was
But Manziel had that more twitch, the flash, and I think when you go back and look at Saluka's highlights, like he has a little bit more wiggle to his game than I think a Tebow did.
Yeah, but he's got that.
Oh yeah, and Timothy said a mini Cam Newton vibes, like yeah, because listen, you can't compare physically to Cam, like obvious. I mean, no one is that big and that fast, but in terms of like his athleticism, I'm with you there with his breakaway speed and his ability to create the explosive play. I'll say this, coach, before we move on, he is that good on a team where a lot of people like I feel like he's so good he can bring his team with him. I think that's why they're a national championship contender. They got some other good pieces. Jalen Coker's a dog at wide receiver. We've talked about that. His catch radius, his connection with Sluka. But if you take Saluka off that team and insert just a good quarterback, I don't think there is the ceiling is as high for this team without him at the signal caller position.
No, because they play, like I said, watching him versus BC. Those guys play for him. Anytime he was tackled, whatever, you had 3 or 4 guys going to get him up, plus going to get themselves set. Anytime a kid has control, and I shouldn't say control, has his team backing him that way, man, I mean, you take him off of that, and it's not going to be the same because they've brought into him being their leader.
Yeah. My last storyline, coach, is this finally the year we see Campbell have a breakthrough season? because since that loss to William and Mary, they competed really well with William and Mary. 10-point loss. William and Mary's a great team. They're a top 10 team, probably going to make a run to the quarter to semifinals, and they're a consistent top 10 team. Since that game, coach, 2 blowout road wins. You got the one over the Citadel, but I'm super impressed that they went into Monmouth, who was receiving some top 25 consideration, and they absolutely demolished them offensively. I mean, they're so balanced offensively. They're averaging almost 200 yards on the ground. They already got 12 rushing touchdowns this year, and they're still putting up over 250 through the air. And I think Haj Malik, man, he's been playing so long that there's no doubt in him as the leader. But man, it really does seem like that running back room. They lost some of their top contributors. It was just like step up, replace. We got talent in this running back room. And I think we're starting to see those recruiting classes pay off, because we both thought, everyone thought Campbell was kind of going to get left behind in the CAA. Man, their only losses to the consensus favorite in that conference. And they beat Monmouth, who was probably going to fight for that 6th to 7th to 8th spot. And they beat them pretty handily on the road.
Yeah. But we touched on them before. This team has been in the top half of recruiting classes for the last 3 years. So those kids, the ones that have stayed, those kids should be now coming of age where this should be something happening on a regular. Now, the consistency part is the only thing that I worry about when you talk about that. B is like, okay, are they going to be able to put that, because we talk about those emotional wins. Are they going to be able to put that together back-to-back weeks consistently, or is this something new and it's going to take them out, take them a couple of weeks to get over that big mammoth win, or is this something that they consistently can do?
Listen, their next game this weekend at home against Elon, that's a winnable game, in my opinion. If they can beat Elon, they go to 3-1, 2-1 in the conference. Their next 2 games become so crucial. They go to Central in a game where, yes, Central is probably going to be favored, but Davius Richard gets banged up against UCLA. We don't know what percentage. Yeah, we don't know what he's going to be, and they're not going to have any doubt that they can't compete with Central after what they did to them last year. I mean, it was a blowout. I don't care what anyone says. They handled Central last year, in a year where Central went on to win the Celebration Bowl, and then they have Hampton, who has been one of the most inconsistent teams. They're missing a bunch of starters. Yeah. Man, if they win those 3 games, which isn't out of the realm of possibility, you're looking at Campbell sitting there 5-1. What would that be? 3-1 in the CAA. And then their next game's against Maine, who's one of the lower end teams at home for homecoming. 6-1, 4-1 in the CAA before you go into the death stretch of Richmond, Delaware. Yeah. I mean, and then at the end of the year, they go play A&T, who has yet to throw for 100 yards in a game and has been anemic offensively. You're looking, they realistically, they could finish their first season in the CAA with only 2 losses.
Yeah. Like you said, if they can get to that stretch and they get to that stretch healthy, the confidence is going to be through the roof. And some of those, some of those top recruiting classes start to show up. And now you're matching people talent for talent. And then you mentioned it, that running back room now inserts itself in the ball games. Now you're talking about shortened ball games to where they could probably get out and be able to survive because they are so talented in that running back room.
Yeah. I mean, and the good thing too is their one tough road game is Richmond on the road. They do have to, they get Delaware at home, which is a big win, but I still would favor Delaware right now. The one thing that they do have that weird late Power 5 game, they play North Carolina on November 4th, the 3rd to last week of the season. You have to get out of there healthy. We saw that with Pete. What was it? 2 years ago with PV, they clinched that SWAC championship berth. They go to was it Texas A&M, and they lose their starting quarterback, like 2 offensive linemen. The defense gets banged up, and now you're going into the SWAC championship crippled. You can't, if you're Campbell, you can't let that happen, because at that point you're probably playing for an at-large bid. You have to be healthy those last 2 weeks of the season
to be able to hit the stretch, the playoff run, or get yourself in position to be in the playoff run. And it's tough, do you throw those kids out, or what do you do? How does that actually work? So I think that's one of those deals where I guess we'll wait and see where we are in the schedule in the win-loss column and kind of go from there.
Yeah, moving into some of the games I want to talk about, we're going to start with one you kind of brought up earlier, and this is one we had to talk about. Sacramento State a huge FBS Power 5 win over Stanford, man. I mean, and for those who didn't watch the preview show or really don't know the backstory, Sacramento State's head coach, Troy Taylor, leaves Sac State, takes the Stanford head coaching job. Defensive coordinator Andy Thompson is promoted to head coach. Andy Thompson leads the Hornets to a huge upset over their former head coach at Stanford. And I mean, listen, shout out to Caden Bennett, Marcus Fulcher, two playmakers. That 49-yard game-winning touchdown that came with less than 2 minutes remaining, that was just a play. He was under pressure. The play broke down. Marcus Fulcher found the open spot, made a guy miss, and they went and scored. And I mean, now you're looking at the Hornets. Coach, they've won 22 straight regular season games, 12 straight road games. Man, this team, everyone was kind of worried that this team was going to take a step back. They got 3 Division I wins over the first 3 weeks of the season, 2 of those on the road. Man, this team's rolling.
And I was one of the ones that thought they would, because they lost some key pieces. I thought if this game was played last year that they would have won this game easily, so to speak. But they go in and they handle themselves. I mean, they handle themselves. They outgained them. Time of possession. They won that. So this wasn't just, a fluke play at the end of the game. I mean, they actually earned this win.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that caught my eye is they stayed efficient on third downs. They were 11 for 16 on third down attempts, and their front 7 played lights out, man. Jet Stanley off the edge was a problem. I want to say he had 3 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Armand Bailey, who's an All-American, and led the team with 11 tackles, also had a sack. I mean, this defense really stepped up, and this defense has played well for most of the year. And then Caden Bennett, listen, they brought in Carson Camp, who was a starter at South Dakota. That first game against Nichols, I think, was a little bit closer than most people expected it to be, but they were rotating quarterbacks in and out to see who's the guy. Man, Bennett has earned that spot. He grabbed it, and you can just see, man, his dual threat ability takes this offense to the next level. That's where Sacramento State shines, in my opinion. You look at last year, Asher O'Hara in the QB rotation. To have a quarterback you don't have to rotate in and out to give you the rushing threat is taking the Sac State team to the next level, man. He had 279 through the air, 100 rushing, and 3 total touchdowns. Caden Bennett has proven to be one of the better quarterbacks in the country right now.
And, the other thing about it, though, B, is that they were able to control what I thought would have been something that Stanford would have had the edge on, was the rushing game. I thought Stanford at some point would just lean on them and break them down. But that wasn't the case. They held that in check, and they made up the difference through the pass game. And then, like you said, on third down, they were just really efficient. They made Stanford, 50% on that kind of deal. That was a team really knowing a team without knowing a team. And basically, hey, we're not scared of you. We're going to come and we're going to play toe-to-toe, and we'll let it go from there. And that's how they actually played.
I mean, and shout out to Timothy in the chat, man. 6 total sacks for Sacramento State, who also, I want to say, did not give up a sack. Man, that's elite offensive line play, and that's your front 7 just going out there and hunting. And you do have to give a shout out. I had head coach Andy Thompson on the show after he was named head coach, and I asked him, I said, are you going to keep running your defense, or are you going to pass that off now that you're the head coach? And he said, we have something special. This is my defense. I'm calling the defense. He was like, maybe I'll give it to someone in the future, but he was like, I know what I can do with this defense. And you're seeing it, man. They're out there playing insane.
He knew who those sophomores and juniors were.
Yes, he did.
He knew who those guys were, man. Ain't no sense in changing that, brother. I'm with him.
And shout out to Sacramento State. Coach Thompson, I got to talk to him before the Nichols game, and that was a hell of a win, one of the biggest wins of the year. But Coach, shifting to a team that is getting votes in the top 25 now, and I'm very surprised because I had him as an honorable mention in my ballot. I didn't think the rest of the country was going to be as quick to jump on board because I was high on this team coming into the preseason. Tennessee State pulling off the win over Gardner-Webb. Coach, we talked a little bit about this game on the preview. Even I think it's a little bit surprising because we were talking a lot about Davion Bryant. Man, Draylon Ellis coming out of nowhere in this game to steal back the starting quarterback position. And they this team, the defense just made key plays. We talked about this, how good this defense can be.
Yep.
Yes, they might not have played a perfect game. They allowed, I think, almost 150 yards rushing. They allowed over 200 through the air, 2 big passing touchdowns, but they made key stops. And I think that's the sign of a good defense is you can get the yards, but you're not getting in the end zone.
They held them to 5 of 22 third down. You can't win many ball games if you get the third down situations 22 times and you only convert 5. Big win for Coach George and all that. But I'm just not ready to jump on this train, man. I just again, when you have the penalties and the turnovers that they had, I just think that's going to later, if you don't clean that up, man, that's later going to catch up to you in a game that you probably should win, but you turn it over, and then you have almost 100 yards in penalties, man. That's just going to make it tough. So I'm not quite ready to jump on the train, but again, big win.
Yeah, no, and I didn't have them in my top 25. I'm not there yet. I put them at 30. That honorable mention spot for me are teams that I have my eye on. If you can keep taking those steps forward, then you can get in there. But Tennessee State, I still need to see more. I'm with you.
Right.
What I was saying, they did a great job. Only 2 for 4 on red zone attempts for Gardner Webb. They did a really good job of not letting them score. And then like you said, the third down defense was amazing. I just want to see, like you said, more discipline, because you can't have over 100 plus penalty yards against UT Martin. Against in the playoffs, if you end up going there, you can't put that up. I still want to see. I think they took a step forward in this, more offensive consistency. I think they showed flashes where on broken plays, that's where Draylen Ellis is best. If the pocket breaks down, if the coverage breaks down,
gives you a chance.
Man, Draylen Ellis is just a playmaker. He's that guy. I want to see more when it's just that 3-5 step drop, and we just got to make a decision. I need to see more of that more than, it's a broken play. I'm that guy. I'm just better than you.
Because somebody's going to end up making you have to do that. They're going to stay pocket. We're going to keep him right there. And we're going to see if your outside guys are better than our outside guys. And we're going to see what the decision making is all about. So at that point, that's where the turnovers, like I say, that's where it's going to become really, really key for them to turn those things down and to polish it up. But hats off to them. And how long was that kick that kid kicked?
I want to say it was like 40 or 50. It was like 40 something yards. I want to say
40 plus yards, man, right down the middle. That's big time, man.
50 on the dot and drained
50.
it.
Yeah, right down the middle. I mean, that's big time. That type of win can take you long way in the season. Can take you a long way.
Shout out to Monroe Beer too. I'm telling you, looking at that defense, that might have been, especially with Kayvon Pope not being with the team anymore. He was let go right before the season. Monroe Beard has stepped up in a huge spot. He's so versatile. He can play the outside linebacker. He can go inside and play Mike. He's great in coverage. He's athletic, man. 12 tackles, a tackle for loss this weekend. That's back. I mean, he's been one of the top performers all 3 games. If Tennessee State can start building some momentum, man, this is a team I'm really, really excited to see. And I'm looking here. I'm pulling up their schedule. This week, not this week. They have a bye week this week, actually. But next week, Coach, at UT Martin, that's the game I think I got circled.
That's going to be the game that gets me on the bandwagon or gets me to saying, okay, cool. Maybe he just needs a little more time. But you've been screaming that young man's name from the beginning. So when he blows up, you've got to be the first one in line there.
That Gardner Webb win was big because they're 2-1. The loss to Notre Dame kind of doesn't really count. I hate to say that, but it doesn't.
No. You gave them a chance to see what really they had, measuring stick. Gave them a chance.
Yeah, not a big thing. At UT Martin, at Kennesaw State the 2 weeks after their bye week. Big games. Kennesaw State, not very good this year. That's a winnable game even on the road, I feel like. That UT Martin game is big, but Coach, after that, Norfolk State, Lincoln, the NAIA school, Lindenwood, who just came up from D2, Charleston Southern, we'll see, Eastern Illinois, and Tennessee Tech. They could be favorites in all those games coming down the stretch. If you can get one out of Kennesaw and UT Martin, that's
pretty good.
Eddie George has a shot, man. So I'm interested to see them. But, Coach, let's move on. A game I want to hit quickly. We both called this game, but man, North Dakota State continues to make a believer out of me, man. Listen, I
Tried
want
to
to
tell you.
apologize.
I tried to
I'll
tell you.
say when I'm wrong.
I tried to
Cam
tell you.
Miller, Cam Miller went out there and just,
Where
I
is
mean,
it?
proved everything I had to say wrong. Coach, 18
Where
for
is it?
19 for 202 touchdowns.
Where is it? I tried to tell you, man. I just, again, a program as such, man, they've got, I'm sure, the pride, they were embarrassed in that national championship game. And I think everybody thinks, or they think that everybody thinks the run is over. I really think they have something to prove, man, and they're playing like it. But I told you, going there, and if they can control it, which they did, it's going to be tough. Almost 35 minutes worth of ball control. I mean, hey, UCA fought. The numbers say they fought, but time of possession, you fall behind a couple scores, it's going to be tough. And NDSU got them behind and kept them behind, and that's what it was. So I really feel like this is a program, a team that's got a chip on their shoulder, that's playing to get back and hoping that that team is there when they get there, because I think they have something to show. They have something to prove.
Yeah, I think the late game kind of small comebacks that Arkansas put on really kind of, I guess, dampened how dominant North Dakota State was this weekend. Coach, it was 49-17 with as late as 7 minutes left in the game.
Before those two
Like,
late, but yeah.
yeah, the late. I mean, North Dakota State played excellent football, man. Cam Miller. I'm not just saying this like, box score watches one thing, man. I've watched this game live. He made some throws that made me say, okay, like maybe I kind of get the NFL hype around him, man. Because I mean, he was putting it on a rope and making some NFL throws in very, very small windows. Cam Miller played a hell. If he can play like that, Coach, this team is good enough to win another national champ. I mean, he is that good. And I think, Cole Payton's electric with his legs. He had another rushing touchdown, but I think we kind of saw him at, there's a reason why Cam Miller was listed the starting quarterback as kind of the guy who throws most of the passes. He has it in him. It's just establishing this week in and week out.
And they've just got to, I think they've got to find one guy on the outside that when teams say, hey, we're going to put 15 people in the box and we're going to make you throw it, that they know they can go get a play to. The QB is good enough to do it. They just got to establish that one guy. I think that no matter what happens there, we ain't got to run it. We can throw it to him and he's going to make a play. He's going to keep us in it. If they can establish that guy and be consistent, they become real problems, again, in the 1AA college football world.
Yeah, the passing defense is great. I love their secondary. I will say I'm not going to make a bold statement on their rushing defense because I just think Sunderic Powell is that good. This is a guy who was an All-American last year, was the ASUN Offensive Player of the Year, 18 carries for 218 yards, 2 touchdowns, and averaged 12 yards per carry. That kid just had he was playing. It's one of those like blackout games where he doesn't even know what he's doing. He's just out there going.
What he ripped one off for
70.
70
yeah,
yards?
it was like, I think it was 7, like, yeah, right in between 70 and 80 yards. I mean, and they didn't know what to do with them. And Coach, everyone asked why he transferred there, because if we talked in the preseason, Darius Hale, freshman All-American running back.
Yep.
They had Colin James, who was good. I mean, they had so much depth. It's like, why was Sunderic Powell transfer there? You see why. He trusted his talent. He's just that good. And I think he established himself as probably the best running back in that running back room. And it never hurts to have 3 good guys, but it also doesn't hurt to have a guy like Sunderic Powell back there.
Because you can ride him, and when he needs to take a blow after that 70-yarder, the next guy you put in there is no slap either. He's going to be able to do the same thing. When he needs a blow, he's able to do the same thing. It's a long season. You hope that no one gets nicked up or dinged up, but it happens, especially the way he runs. You've got to be able to have a guy that can come in there behind him and still play to that level. And they have that. Now they've just got to sew up some things defensively, I think, to help them. And they'll be, I think they've shown that they can get back into games and become a playoff type team if they can continue to build and get better defensively, so to speak.
Shifting to a game, Coach, and I'm sure you've already watched this game about 5 times because this team has a common opponent with the team that you're playing this weekend, man. Incarnate Word, a big win over Abilene Christian on the road. Man, I'm just going to say it. If Zach Calzada starts cooking like this, the Southland's in trouble.
But we said it. We call that. If they get themselves together, they're going to be trouble just because we know everybody that they brought in there, how many people they brought in there, the talent on paper. Now, if that talent on paper starts to show up on the field, they're going to be a tough out. Going to be a tough out.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend, Calzada, 373 through the air, 1 passing touchdown, had 2 rushing, led the team with 66 rushing yards. If I had a critique, though, Coach, I still don't know if they have a guy at running back. And that's my concern is if you could take, if it comes to, like, it can Calzada do what Lindsey Scott did. And when you look back at that Lindsey Scott team, they had a 1,000-yard rusher. I mean, they could run the football really well. It can Trey Siggers, can Gerald Wiley, can someone emerge as the guy at running back, because Calzada, when it comes to conference play, and especially when you get into like playoff time, because I think this is a playoff team, you aren't going to be able to just do that. Like, you can't go out there and taking away Calzada's yards. I don't think they had a running back that hit 30. That's not going to win you any games.
And then, at the the other part of that is how many times are you going to be able to go out there and throw for 400 yards? Because at some point, teams are just going to say, you know what, we know you can't run it. We'll just drop it back and see what happens there. So, yeah, I'm with you on that as far as trying to find something to help them in the run game or somebody else. And they've got to do that for that reason. And also, you don't want to get him banged up. And that's just a given that's going to happen if he's running and doing that much for you in your run game. Hope that it doesn't, but the odds of it not happening are slim to none. So they've got to find another way to generate those yards other than him. So I agree with you fully on that.
Yeah, Brandon Porter, a dog and wide receiver. That's all. How many? Kid just a playmaker.
two football fields.
Yeah, I mean, it just and Jalen Campbell shows some flashes, but when you got a guy like Porter, man, he's just going to be the guy that gets to football. I really do like their front seven, though. Incarnate Word's front seven has the experience, the talent to be special, but their secondary is really surprising me. They have a lot of new starters in the secondary. They were really efficient against McIver. I want to say they held them to a season low. I wanted 15 of 32 for 189 and an interception, no touchdowns. They only sacked them once, man. The secondary was just locking it up in the back end, and you got to give them credit, man. They had a lot of new faces defensively, especially in the secondary, and it seems like they're slowly building chemistry. And if this team can get that type of play out of the secondary, I think with how Southeastern Louisiana's looked, which we're going to get into them next, this is the favorite to win the Southland right now. I think Incarnate Word, Kilo, this team looks primed to be that team.
10 yards per pass, man. Offensively. I mean, that's a first down every time you decide you want to throw the ball. That's tough. And then, like you said, when you're talking defensively, and they clean up and they can take the ball away and don't give it away. Again, like you said, that's what it's going to come down to. That game may be the deciding game for the championship.
Moving on to another Southland team here, man. Didn't get the win, but I want to give a shout, man. Eastern Washington, we talked about them in the preview as a team that had a really tough first 2 games. You got North Dakota State and then a road game against Fresno State. They look like such a better team than that 3-win team we saw last year, and they get a big win here, score 20 fourth quarter points with 2 big touchdowns late in the fourth quarter, man, to pull away 40-29. I'm telling you, man, Visbrus at quarterback, I think this kid can be special. He's still on the younger side. I want to say he's only a redshirt sophomore or something like that. It's either a sophomore, junior, but 33 of 47 for 349 and 2 passing touchdowns this weekend. And I mean, I think this kid could be special, Coach, if he just continues to take those small step forwards that we've seen week to week this year.
And keep the turnovers down, which he did, only having the 1 interception. But the other thing, man, that I think was a glaring standout, looking at the numbers, kind of brushing through the game itself, Southeastern was 3 of 11 third downs. And when you're on the road, that's the one thing you've got to be able to convert more so than at home is your third downs. And 3 of 11 is just not going to get it. And then when you are almost 200 yards short against the team, you've got to find a way to make up those yards, and that's from the third down, just to give yourself an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, Eastern Washington, as great as Vespers is, having wide receivers like Efton Chisholm, Nolan Ohm, man, those guys were outstanding. I mean, even Anthony Stell had 8 catches. I want to say when you had 3 wide receivers over 8 catches,
yeah,
man, you'll take that. Even as a wide receiver coach, you would take that. I mean, listen, give me that all day.
And 3 times on Sunday.
Oh yeah, 1,000. And then shout out to Justice Jackson too, man. When your starting running back gives you 91 a touchdown, average almost 8 yards per carry, it takes a lot of pressure off your quarterback. And I think when you look at the run game for Southeastern wasn't terrible. I mean, they went for 152, and I thought they just weren't able to establish any consistency because of this coach. The quarterbacks were not. I mean, the passing game was. I don't want to say it was bad. I mean, they weren't at 143, 3 passing touchdowns a pick, but I felt like the passing game lacked explosion. It was in terms of efficiency, pretty good, but they didn't have any explosiveness to their offense. And when on the other side of the ball, when your guy's going for 349, you got to push the ball down the field eventually. And I felt like they lacked that vertical aspect to their passing game.
And when you fall behind, that becomes a problem. And looking at the numbers, exactly what you said, it was and I don't know if that was done to protect the quarterbacks, but it wasn't just like a push the ball down the field type of thing. And when you're not running it at a high clip, you've got to be able to push it down the field, especially when you fall behind. So they've got to find that aspect, and especially with the collision that we're thinking is going to happen. They've got to find a way to stretch it consistently in the pass game to give themselves an opportunity.
Man, the final 2 games, 2 teams that are probably 2 of the hottest in college football right now. We'll start with Western Carolina, man. The Fighting Kirkland Bells out here proving the world wrong and still getting no respect. Coach,
I just want to know, did you put them? I looked at it a little bit, but I didn't really dissect the top 25, man. Are they there?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, they're in my ballot, and they made the stats per form ballot too. They're still below Stanford, which is insane. I don't know how this has happened. They're 23rd in the actual ballot. In my ballot, they're 13th.
Well,
which based on the law of averages with all the voters means there's still some voters that aren't putting Western Carolina in their top 25.
That aren't giving them votes. Yeah.
It makes no sense. I didn't get a chance to let me pull it up. I didn't get a chance to take a look at the coaches poll today, but the coaches poll is terrible anyway. But that's
forgot. I'm glad you let me write that down, because as soon as we stop, and I'm going to coach's office, and I'm going to demand that I get the poll, and I'm the official voter.
Coach, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Stanford is 17th in the coaches poll. Western Carolina is not ranked.
How?
I mean, Coach, I just want to put this in perspective. Hampton is getting votes in the top 25, and they lost to Norfolk, and you still got coaches not voting Western Carolina in their top 25. I just want to list you off the teams that receive votes in the coaches poll. Southeastern Louisiana, 0-3, just lost to Eastern Washington. Richmond, 1-2 with a loss to Morgan State, who, by the way, Morgan State didn't get any votes this week either.
Come on.
Villanova. Villanova's okay. I don't hate that. I'm not sold on Villanova, but they're 2-1, not bad. Eastern Kentucky, getting votes, who just lost to Western Carolina. Hampton getting votes. Stephen F. Austin, which I'm not mad about Stephen F. Austin. That they're not a bad team, but I'm not sold on Stephen F. Austin yet. Yale, who is 0-1 right now in their season, just got blown out by Holy Cross. Jackson State, who's 2-2, just gave up 77 to Texas State. Austin P getting votes as well, 2-1. Don't hate that for sure. Illinois State, I'm not pissed about that. Central Arkansas, Chattanooga, Eastern Washington, which I'm for, and Princeton. What are we doing at the
What
coaches poll? Like, what are we voting on?
by that logic, Norfolk should be receiving votes. You know what I mean?
Coach,
Nothing against them.
Harvard moved 9 spots to number 25 after beating St. Thomas, who has no scholarships.
I don't know, man. And Western Carolina, again, handled business versus the number 18 team?
Yeah.
Handled business.
And at that time, we're number like 8.
Yeah, top 10
30,
at the time.
30-7, and went on the road this weekend and beat Eastern Kentucky, who, if I'm not mistaken, was like one of the top 3 vote getters in terms of like receiving votes, like just outside the top 25. Still not enough.
And I mean, they are doing it with numbers, brother. I'm talking about almost 600 yards of total offense. So it's not like it's just muddying up a game. I mean, they are doing it with numbers. And I don't understand it. Now, they've got to get better in certain areas, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're still winning. They beat a top 10 team the first time out. And it wasn't a letdown. They won again. I don't get that. I definitely don't get the Morgan. I think I'm more upset about the Morgan and then that situation because Morgan's been lights out, man. I mean,
they lost this weekend, so I get it that some people probably hopped off the band because
if that's the case, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, then you got to hop off the Hampton train. Like they lost to Norfolk State.
If that's the case,
what are we doing? Like I don't understand it at all. I think the media poll's more consistent, but I mean the media poll's not perfect either, man. These like whoever doesn't have Western Carolina in their ballot still got to be kicked off the voting panel. What
you got to tell me what's going on. You got to tell me why.
And what scares me is Western Carolina's next 3 games, they're probably going to be favored in. They got Charleston Southern at the Citadel and at Chattanooga. Chattanooga, will be a tough game on the road.
Yeah.
But they're probably going to be that's probably 3 wins going in their bye week. 5-1, undefeated in conference, and sets up a huge matchup after their bye week against Furman, who they get at home.
I just don't understand how they and it might fall apart, but they should at least be getting recognized now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the past 2 games. Like, let's take this weekend into account. Cole Gonzalez goes out there, throws for 340 and 3 touchdowns. Goes touchdown for touchdown, pass for pass with an All-American super senior and Parker McKinney. And Cole Gonzalez is going out here blow for blow as a true sophomore in only his second season and wins the quarterback duel. And then at running back, you got one of my favorite players to watch. He's one of my favorite players in the FCS. Desmond Reed goes for 177 and a touchdown, averaging over 6 yards per carry. The offense is dangerous, man. The offense, I mean, they got talent at receiver, Sincere Lee. Desmond Reed's even doing it in the receiving game, gave you 4 for 63. AJ Colombo. They got so much talent. And defensively, yes, it might not be, the North Dakota State, like we're just going to dominate you and just suffocate you. We're going to give up yards, but guess what? We're going to still outscore you. Like we're going to put up more points than you, and we're going to escape with the win.
It's the old arena football adage. If you can get me 2 stops, we're good. And that's the way they're playing. Just defense just need to get a couple stops, eat a little clock, give us the ball, and we'll be fine. But when you got a running back that's touching it 29 times, you're throwing it 33 times, and you're efficient, and your defense is playing ball, I mean, you're going to be a tough out. You just need to make sure your defense travels, like you said, with some of those tough road games coming up. Defense is going to have to travel. So where it was, get me 2 stops, going to need you to get us at least 3 stops, that kind of thing. And if they can do that, man, they've got enough offensive firepower, I think, to stay in with anybody.
Kirkland Bell is proving everyone that he knows how to build. I'll say this, and I hate to say this, I want coaches to stay at the FCS level if possible. I want to keep FCS keep their talent, but we know what college football is. If you're good, the next level's calling. And if Kirkland Bell builds like a legit contender at Western Carolina, he's getting a Power 5 shot.
Oh, no doubt. Just because of his background, his resume. He did it at JU with no scholarships.
Yeah.
So
Valdosta.
Valdosta. Obviously, he can recruit because he's done it everywhere. To be able to do it at JU with no scholarships.
Man, come on.
I mean, in Florida, I mean, that's saying something.
And he can recruit the state of Florida with the best of them too. And I think that's going to be the selling point. And that's why I was really hyped when he got the hire, because man, Western Carolina didn't have a pipeline to Florida. Now you got a bunch of Florida boys up in the mountains of North Carolina, and they're balling right now.
I mean, we'll go anyway and play ball, but I just didn't know about that mountain thing in Carolina with snow. I just didn't know about that. But he's done it. He's proved he's gotten them out there, man, and those kids are doing really well.
I saw a clip of Kirkland Bell talking to his team, man, and you know this. You've been in the profession. There's those coaches that just have that aura about them, where you talk to him and it's like, man, I would run through a wall for him. And me and him were just having a conversation. Like, that's Kirkland Bell. Like there's a negative connotation with this. I don't know what word to say, but he almost has like that car salesman vibe where it's like, he's going to sell you on it, but you really, really believe him. Man, he was talking to his team after the game and he was like, and you could just feel it on the screen, and the players like are getting built up and they're yelling and and then like they all like hop up at once. And it's like, that team believes in him and he has them thinking they can go win a championship this year.
And that just continues to build after every win. It was through the roof after the Stanford thing. And people probably were hearing the whispers about it being a fluke. The next week a win. So that thing just continues to build, man. And he is who he is. And, those kids, like you said, those kids are believing in everything he's saying. And that's half the battle.
And all those players I named, Coach, Timothy, shout out to him in the chat, told me all four of those were sophomores, true sophomores. If he can keep the transfer portal away from this team, next year, Western Carolina is going to be terrifying to play.
Got to be preseason number one.
I don't know about number.
I'm saying in the
SoCon, yes. In the SoCon, yes. I'm with you. I thought you meant now. I'm like, whoa.
I just hope that they can get in the top 25 at this rate.
At this point, like, what do they have to do? Like, are we gonna have to make them beat Furman for them to even get in the coaches poll, because they're the top 25 in the FCS stats now? I mean, same for Eastern Washington, Coach. Okay, let me ask you. I'm gonna save it to the end. Let's get this over this last game, then we'll get to our final segment. Southern Illinois, another team like Western Carolina, on the upswing, had a huge week 1 win over Austin Peay. FBS win last week. They pull off one of the most miraculous wins, man. I want to give a play-by-play of the final part of this game for those who didn't get to watch it, because the box score doesn't tell it. 26-25 win for Southern Illinois. SEMO has the ball. Gets to third down. They're just going to run it out and then punt it, make them go the whole field. Geno Hess, All-American running back, he had a hell of a game. The one mistake at the one wrong time. He's in a pile. They stand him up. The refs are late on the whistle. He gets stripped in the pile, and Southern Illinois runs out with the ball. They call it a fumble on the field. Doesn't get overturned in review. Southern Illinois has a short field, goes 6 plays for 38 yards. Game-winning touchdown pass from Nick Baker. Game of the week, Coach. The Salukis, man, they're proving everyone wrong here. They said last year we had a lot of hype. We didn't live up to it. This year we're showing everybody.
And that, as a coach, I know they are still steaming over that, because, at the end of the day, it should be, hey, man, we're running this thing out. Once that pile stands up, blow the whistle. But also, that young man's got to understand it. You're not going to come out of there and go 80 yards. Once contact is made, I know instincts take over, but at that point, you got to start covering that thing up and get down, just for that reason. But then you go back, and I want to, again, man, they turned that thing over 4 times. Turned that thing over 4 times and still got out of there. So I know they're riding high and feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah, I mean, they outgained SEMO 543 to 337.
Yeah, crushed.
And with 2 for 11 on third down. But Coach, the key here, 4 of 6 on fourth downs. They might not have been super efficient, but man, when they needed to make a play, and sometimes that's what you need as a team. Like I think fans sometimes get upset. Every win's not going to be a pretty win. I will say it like that.
No.
Sometimes, man, you might not play your best. If you can get out with a win, listen, we can fix our issues later. We'll put some makeup on it the next week going into the next game. We just need to get the W this week. Just get out with a win at all costs.
And then we'll go from there. Because at the end of the day, winning is hard, man. Winning is hard. So you'll take a 26-25, 4-turnover win any day. And we'll work on that next week. But right now, when we get back on this bus, man, we are going to celebrate like it's 1999. So
yeah.
I think at the end of the day, you gotta have luck, you gotta beat the injury bug, and you've got to be somewhat talented in order to win, ball games in the championship. And right there was that one luck that they can point back to at the end of the year and be like, man, we got lucky with that one. So you got to have that.
Yeah, Nick Baker made some mistakes, but man, 3 touchdowns, including the game winner, went for 462 passing yards this weekend. Just balling out. I know you see the comment. I was laughing at it too. Listen, we're not going to address it. We're not even going to say it and put it out in the atmosphere. Listen, we're going to say nothing. But listen, Vincent Davis, transfer from Charleston Southern, 8 for 126, a touchdown. The kid's a playmaker. Isaiah Hartrop, 7 for 94, 2 touchdowns. The wide receiving core played outstanding. Coach, you had, including the running back, you had 5 players with 5 or more catches and 5 players with over 55 receiving yards. The way that Baker spread the ball out and got everyone involved was huge. And that was a big key for this game.
Hey, that's a winning day for that area of your ball club. That's a winning day. And then to almost throw for close to 500 yards, man. Great. Just got to clean up those 2 INTs. But, that's being efficient, and that's really knowing where people are going to be and trusting everybody that, is in the pass game. Not all those guys are receivers. So, he's got big trust in those guys, and it shows up in the stat line when you could look and see that many guys had over this many amount of catches.
Yeah, PJ Jules on the defensive side showing his All-American potential. This was the guy who I really consider putting him on my preseason All-American. I want to see a little bit more. Man, he has just been playing. I mean, he's had A-plus games all 3 weeks, 15 tackles this weekend, some tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups from the safety spot. The defensive line did a great job establishing the line of scrimmage. I want to say they had 3 or 4 sacks this weekend. Man, huge win for the Salukis, man. Keep building momentum. To go into conference play 3-0 is huge for this team. Now it's, where do you fall in the pecking order? Are you that second tier contender, or can you take a step forward and compete with the North Dakota, South Dakota State and make things a little bit more interesting in the MVFC? And that's the question mark for them. But at the end of the day, man, just getting into the playoffs, whether it's in a large bid or whatever it may be, getting back to the playoffs is in reach right now for Southern Illinois.
Yes. And that, again, you can point to, hey, guys, we played this bad and still won. If we clean these things up, guys, that all that stuff is right there, man, within reach. We just got to clean this up. So I'm sure right now they have that circle. They can see it, can't quite get to it yet, but they can see it and they know it's in range.
Yeah. So, Coach, man, as we shift to this last segment, man, you said you want to save a topic to the end, man. Let's address it.
Go ahead, man. Start it.
Oh, it's about the voting.
Yeah, start it, man. Start it.
Oh man. Okay, so the question, this kind of came from the voting thing, but as a coach, do you think there's such a thing as a good loss?
Only if you go and Sac loses that game by 3 or by 1. I think that's a good loss. That's something they can point to. That's something they can say, hey, guys, we were right there. We got a good group here. But you still point out it's a loss. But that loss is way different than being on the other end of a 84-17 loss. That's a bad loss. Even though all losses are losses, that's a bad loss. So I think there are certain things, certain games, certain losses that fall under that category, but it's a fine line of what's considered or could be considered Me.
Yeah, okay. So that question came from because there was a big discussion around the top 25 is a win over a D2 or a Pioneer League or a lower conference team. Does a close win against that team, should that weigh less than than, like, let's say, who do I want to use? Youngstown State goes up to Fargo and loses like a 10 point game. Like, it's competitive, but they lose. Obviously, is that loss better than a close win over a lower tier program?
I think so. Even though I think neither one of those should be into you. If you put one into the category, you got to put the other one into the category. Just because, Morgan State's loss, which we all know should have been a win at Akron, still comes up as a loss. But they go and they beat Coach Fred INT by 70. What? If we're counting one, we got to count the other.
I'm with you because there's some people that say there's it, at the end of the day you're counting wins and losses, but I think at the FBS level, maybe, like, if you're
No doubt.
a top, like, you got the full scholarships, everyone's competing on the same money level, like, you got to go out there and win those games. But the FCS level, it's tough because you got to grade teams on like this weird scale, especially early in the season, because there's teams that are in the top 25 that are 1-2, but they've played two Power 5 teams. And then you got another team behind them that's 3-0, but they played two D2 teams and then like a Pioneer League team. And it's like, okay, is that 3-0 better than that 1-2?
And that's where it becomes hairy to me. And then that leads to the question that I had, which part of the last segment that I want to talk about. Would it be better for FCS to not start it until after all that is over? Just because of that, you've got teams that you're putting in that haven't even played. What's the benchmark? What are you judging them on? What they did last year, or what they have on paper potentially to be? That's where, to me, I always think this about. Well, I've always had this thought about even the upper level. This really shouldn't start until maybe week 3. Even for them, Florida State plays 3 lower level teams and they shoot to number 1. And then the first time they get to somebody in the ACC, they get beat. They were to start at number 1, but how far do they go with that loss? That kind of thing. That's why I'm, especially for this level, I think it has to be a real talk of, we don't start this till week 3, get all those games out the way. Now, after that first week of matchups, now you can kind of put people where they rank naturally. Because if you start out with 2 D2 teams and you win, which you're supposed to do, and you keep climbing, that first loss is not going to hurt you, so to speak. As to where somebody that started out with 2 FBS teams and 0-2, and then they win their first FCS, nobody's paying attention to them, a la Western Carolina, because they started out 0-2. So I don't know if it's even possible to do, but I think that has to come into effect, I think, somehow.
I think you see that with Southeastern Louisiana, 0-3. Because they played South Alabama and Mississippi State, had a tough FCS road game where they had to go from Louisiana to Cheney or Cheney, Washington, whatever it is. They said in the chat last episode. Yeah, way up there on the red turf. I mean, they're 0-3, but I don't want to pick on it. Oh, God, I'm trying to think. I don't want to pick on anyone out of pocket. But okay, I'm going to do it. Central. Would Central be 2-1 if they played the same schedule as Southeastern Louisiana, and you gave Southeastern Louisiana A&T, Winston-Salem State?
Yeah, and with the loss that Central took, UCLA still is UCLA. It was a huge loss, point differential, so to speak. Do you move them if they were, or do you leave them where they're at because you're saying they play UCLA? So that's where I think it kind of goes back and forth.
Yeah, because I saw someone in the chat put Valley had a tough schedule. I'm like, no, we're not going to say they had two. They've had two D2 games in a bye week, and they're oh
Yeah,
and yeah, that's not no. I mean, because
I get it, but nah.
yeah, I got what you mean, but no, it wasn't a tough one. But I mean, I'm with you because I think at all levels you should wait till week 3 to 4 to probably do rankings. Now they will never do it because they want content, they want talking points, they want a way to promote the matchups because when you like Alabama, Texas, when it's a top 10 matchup, draws more eyes than if it was Alabama versus Texas, no numbers beside the name. Now, I don't know why, because we know how good those teams are.
Anyway,
It should still draw a lot of eyes, but especially with the FCS, when you're competing for views and you're competing like for perception, sometimes you need like South Dakota State, Montana State, you needed the 1 versus 3.
I get it.
Yeah, so they'll never do it, but I'm with you because I do think there's some teams, and there's also some teams that survive on reputation. I moved them down a little bit, but if they struggle next week, man, I don't know if I'm going to rank them. You got the Montana. They're 3-0. They didn't look impressive against Butler week 1. They had a solid win week 2 against Utah Tech. They beat Ferris State by 7. They were down 10-3 at halftime. I see people with Montana in the top 10, and I'm like, what do we watch? Like, is that really a top 10 team? I mean, because right now, if they played any one of the top 10, even the non-Big Sky teams in the top 10, I don't think I'm picking Montana in a neutral site to win that game.
Right. I'm laughing because someone put in the chat that Valley had a tough D2 schedule, but it's it's tough. And like you said, I'm with you. I know it won't change, but there's got to be. I think voters have to look at it different. I think voters have to look at it, but I think they have to look at it differently. It's like going by the days of old. I recognize these names, so I expect these names to be the same teams they were 5 years ago, and that's not the case. At this day and age in football, I mean, it changes from week to week, definitely from year to year, who's up, who's down. I just think if there was a way to change it, I think they've got to look at it. But I'm like you. I think there's other factors that won't allow them to change how that goes.
No, I mean, and I get it's a talking point too. They're always going to want preseason rankings and stuff like that because it generates all season talk. It's great to release it before the season. It's like, oh man, you're so wrong. This team's going to suck because of this. Like, it's good, and it's good for us because we had a whole show about preseason rankings. But in terms of that, I do think, man, because if you brought it back to even you can have the preseason rankings. Now you go to week 4, man, you should just start a new ballot. What would like if you took it? I mean, because the FCS is tough, like you said. You still have that problem of looking. But we'll take it FBS for an example, real quick. Would Alabama be top 15 right now after how they've looked the first 3 weeks?
Lost to Texas, struggle versus I won't even say
South Florida.
At this point a middle of the road group of 5, maybe a lower group of 5. I don't think so, but I think the past has a lot to do to where they kind of stay where they are. LSU got manhandled by Florida State, tumbled down. They come out and they bully Grambling. They move up a couple spots, and I'm just like.
To be fair, that looked really good after they just got done putting up like 900 yards on Mississippi State. So like maybe they
knew something, but before that though, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think those that vote owe it to the vote to at least put some time in to actually see what you're checking off. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, because like with the media poll, because are all the voters reliable? Probably not. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you're probably going to have some sort of even with the AP poll at FBS and the coaches poll at FBS, there's some inconsistencies. But strictly talking FCS, I feel like a higher percentage of the voters in the stats perform poll actually watch the games than the voters in the coaches poll. I would guarantee there might not be a coach who had time to like really even barely look at the scores for all the games, for all the teams that were possibly eligible for the top 25. There's no way.
I get it. It's due by when?
Okay, so I don't vote in the coaches poll. I know for the media poll, it's like early Monday morning, Sunday night, somewhere in there.
Yeah, the coaches poll, if I'm not mistaken, is due Monday by, I don't know, maybe 10 or something like that. So you're talking about you play Saturday night and you got Sunday to watch, correct, do all that other stuff. It's tough to go back and at least scour through games to see what you're going to put down. I think it just kind of turns into one of those things, like you said. It's just kind of I know him, I don't know him, I kind of know him, that kind of thing.
Or we're playing them in 2 weeks. Let me go ahead and bump them up. So, in case we play them,
just
we
in
want to.
case.
Yeah, just in case we might see them down the road, we'll put them a little bit higher. Because I'm looking here, our ballots for the media poll are due at 11 a.m. Eastern time on Monday, which I'm assuming the coaches poll is probably around that anyway.
Yeah.
Man, I'm because your schedule's busy. I mean, heck, we had to move this show because you were busy last night. You guys had a night practice.
Yeah.
As busy as your schedule is, man, what is Fred McNair doing from Saturday night when Matt McNeese game ends at 9:30 p.m. on Saturday night? And now he's got to run a whole team throughout Sunday.
Yeah. And that's why I'm going to take the reins on that. And I'll just be the guy that's like, yeah.
So was Fred a voter this year?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So
he's part of the problem.
Did you ask him how many FCS games he watched this weekend?
He's part of the problem. That's why I wrote it down. As soon as we get done right here, I'm gonna go around his office and say, "Hey, man, from now on, I'm gonna take that off your plate, brother. I got it."
You said, "Listen, I do a full FCS show. I'm out here talking about Eastern Washington and Western Carolina and Furman."
Hey, I got it. I got you covered. I'll make you look good.
But we got to talk. We got to talk to Fred and just see if he could come on and break down his ballot for the first 2 weeks. And I got to see what we got on that.
He'd have a good time with that. I'm gonna put that in play. Yeah, he'd have a good time with that.
Oh, but he would probably crack up knowing him because he's funny with it too. But Coach, final takeaways from the week, man. Give me your biggest winner and loser from week 3, man, as we wrap this up.
Man, it's got to be Sac, biggest winner. They had to feel good all sorts of ways, not just a W, but a guy that you used to play for just a few months ago. You go out, you perform big in front of him, and you beat him. Not that there was any ill feelings, but I'm sure there was some, locker room talk to get them going about that. But I think they have to be one of the biggest winners of the weekend. And I don't know, man. I don't want to say it, but I just feel like I'm not going to say it because it was out of conference deal. Yeah. But I think SU, big winner because it was getting hot down in Baton. So I feel like, that was one of the biggest winners because they had to have it. And it's a have to have, I think, for them going forward. And then the other biggest winner is of us, of course. I think we had a lot of people that were ready to sink the boat. And we, the kids came out, played great. So I'm going to put us in that category as a big winner as well for this past weekend.
You have any losers this week?
Yeah, man, it's got to be Coach Boehner, man. I mean, he barked his way into that loss, man. That made national news. You can't go out there and lose, man. You make national news about your press conference, man. I got to go with that just because of the press conference and hype that it came with. Not that I was mad at it. I'm just saying.
No, I love it. So I'm with you. Winner, Sac State. Winner, Western Carolina. Huge road win. The Salukis escaping with the women. I think those are easily the 3 biggest winners. Loser, a majority of HBCU football this weekend. Yep. Okay, so everyone knows HBCU Nightly, Josh Sims. We got a big group chat to kind of game plan the spaces and everything. Each week we do our top 10 HBCU power rankings. There was a player in there, a former player who played at an HBCU as a coach at an HBCU program right now, who said it was the worst weekend of HBCU football he remembers in years. The MEAC coach winless this weekend. Winless. And yes, you had the UCLA, the Temple game and all that. Howard collapsing down the stretch against Hampton in a big rivalry gives the CAA a big win over the MEAC.
Yeah.
Richmond destroying Delaware State 38-6, and then Morgan State collapsing against Townsend in a huge not a huge but a battle for Baltimore.
For the wheel.
No, that was the Salukis.
Salukis won the wheel.
Yeah, the Salukis won the wheel. They had some dope pictures of that. And then the SWAC this weekend, of course, Miami picking apart Bethune. Grambling's defense struggling with Florida Memorial, who are they D2? Are they like
NAIA?
Yeah, you can't. They struggled in the first half against Florida Memorial. Miles almost knocking off UAPB. FAMU struggling against West Florida in the first half. PV 69-0 SMU. Rice over Texas Southern. You had the conference game, but then you had Delta State over Valley by 28 points. And then Jackson goes and gives up 77 to Texas State.
A bad 77.
Yeah, I mean, the only two teams, and I've heard Southern fans aren't even happy with their win. So, like, they're the only happy fan base right now in the SWAC and MEAC are you guys. Like, that's it. Like, everyone else is, like, kind of upset. I mean, FAMU fans are happy. Listen, they played, the number 4 team in D2, got out with a 21-point win. They won by 20+. We said that was kind of the margin. There might be 2 happy fan bases in the SWAC and MEAC right now.
Yes. And someone put in the Tennessee State. I forgot about that. Yeah, that was huge.
Yes. Yeah.
The walk-off win.
That's a huge one. But man, it's got to be better out of conference, man. Like, this is just getting like out. I mean,
does anybody know? Because I tried to go back, but I couldn't pull it up to see how we got to the 21-20 Pine Bluff Miles game.
So Pine Bluff was up 14-0 in the first quarter.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were up the entire. They never lost the lead. They were up 21-7 late in the third. I went back and watched some highlights of that game. Yeah, I mean they controlled the game. I'll give them that. And then Miles scored a late touchdown in the third, and then scored late in the it was like mid fourth. They scored, and they had the PAT blocked actually, and that's how we got to 21-20. It should have been 21-21
overtime. And we get
and UAPB blocked the extra point.
Oh man. That's tough.
But hey, a win's a win. And listen, Miles beat Alabama State, man. If I'm UAPB, I was 0-2. Listen, like you said, I'm taking the win.
I know that.
And like D-Lob said, that is true. Miles scored off of a muff punt.
Okay.
In the fourth quarter, like it was a bad punt. So you could say, yeah, they blocked an extra point, but that at the end of the day, they came out with the win. I will say a big loser for me, not a big loser, just a loser overall. Man, the Southland. I talked a little bit about it earlier. They have struggled in out of conference games outside of Incarnate Word.
Yep.
It's bad. And Ron, I'm not going to pick on the Pioneer. Listen, they don't have scholarships. We expect that from them. We don't expect that from the SWAC and MEAC. So I'm not going to compare those two, but I will say I think the Southland overall, outside of Incarnate Word, no one's really looked impressive. Now, Southeastern Louisiana has played a murderer's row of schedule, but they still got to win. Like, that Eastern Washington game was a winnable game from them, and they didn't play well. But man, I'm about to say, Dwayne, yep. I did not. Me and Coach said on the show we were not picking West Florida.
No.
Yeah, that was everyone else. That was everyone else. Me and Coach said it got to be by 20. Y'all got 20. I'm good with that.
Yeah, no. Wouldn't say I did not say that part. I just saw that. Like, no, I didn't pick that one.
Yeah, no. Well, we're not moving the goalpost. FAMU should have won that game by 20, and they won that game by 20. I'm good with it. But there were some fans that I heard very vocally in that first half, not happy with the first half performance. But in the second half, man, they turned it on. The offense went stupid in the second half.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, man. I mean, they're kids. No matter how much or how you press upon them as a coach throughout the week, don't overlook it. I'm sure that some of that was in their head, like, hey, we're just gonna come out, roll over this thing, and then they actually had to work And I did see that as someone just put in the bottom of the chat that I saw what that could have actually been had that last score count. I actually saw that. So, those are bad losses, like we talked about. No matter how you look at it, bad loss. Now, because if it starts to come, it gets in your psyche. I don't care what you say. We played Alabama. It still gets in your psyche. You look up, you walk off a field, and you just got beat 91-7. That's going to be played in your mind for a long time. You're going to hear about it for a long time. All that stuff. So that to me constitutes one of those things that's really like a bad loss.
Yeah, because it's tough to kind of come away with positives when the conference overall is struggling without a conference at your level. And then, I mean, there wasn't a game like against group of 5 teams that was even close. Like, I mean, there wasn't a single game that was in 1 or 2 scores.
Right.
At the end, like,
right.
And it's got to be tough because this is what I said is like, yes, you're not supposed to win those games, but across the FCS, you have teams competing in those games. And it's like you at least want to have you want to look back like that Idaho loss this week. I mean, they were leading 17-0 up until like the late third quarter. Like that's something you're just like, man, we really out here
should have had it
balling. Yeah, and then you got teams knocking off Stanford, and you got Morgan coming down to the last play against Akron. It's like those games are opportunities still to prove like how good of a team you are. And I do agree, Dwayne. Listen, FAMU gets credit against South Florida, man, because South Florida came out here and was balling against Bama last week. So they
had an opportunity.
That game was competitive. So I think that's really and truly next year. That's something I want to see is just like as a conference, man, you got to step up and start winning some out of conference games, man. It's just getting sad with the streak now.
Yeah, and that was a good loss for Miles College, being what they had done the week before, and having the opportunity to pull that. They got to feel really, really good going into their conference play. So I'll give you that on that type of situation. We just know now going in, we got to really. I guarantee you, the next time they practice, the extra point team will have at least 3 periods of nothing but blocking full on extra point practice. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's definitely a good loss.
There's a few teams that got to get some special teams practice, man. Jackson allowed 200 or 300 yards, it felt like, on kick returns this weekend. That kid from Incarnate Word, I'm blanking on his name. He was like an all conference true freshman. I was like Cole Wilson. Man, that kid was cooking the kickoff coverage team for Jackson, man. I mean, it was insane, man. But coach, man, before we get out of here, big conference game this weekend versus PV, man. At the house too. Get another home game, man. How you guys feeling going into this week?
The main thing, like you said, man, at the house, don't have to take that ride. Got one in last week on the grass. Got a big win. Got some things going. Looked really good offensively early. Just gotta maintain that throughout. 4 quarters. Defense hopefully continues to build, continues to play fast and hard. We like our opportunity. We like our chance at home. So really excited about it. First one, get a chance to either go up one or be chasing. That's just what it is at this point. And that's how it is from this point on. And someone in the chat asked me, who did I think would win the East? That's going to be a good battle, man. But I think for sure right now the flagship is in Tallahassee. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. Just from looking around the East at scores, peeking in on a few games from East teams. They've got to make up a lot of ground unless FAM just kind of gives it to someone. I don't know if anybody over there can catch them right now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, Alabama State hasn't looked super impressive. A&M just caught a loss to Southern, so they're down a game. It's like, oh, like what? It's really Jackson and FAM, and it's like who's
going to help Jackson?
Yeah, because right now I'm looking. I mean, I'll be honest, and this is no offense to some of the, you don't have to shake your head in agreement, man. I know you're coaching the conference. Let's not give anything away. The conference as a whole is really bad right now, based on like what each team's put on film. When I look at FAMU's schedule, it's like, who's gonna catch them? Jesus, man. Like there's some like matchups where it's like, okay, maybe that team could have, but they look terrible. This other team just came off a D2 loss. Like this other team's got injuries. They don't have a quarterback. I mean, it's just like a murderer's row of problems right now when you look across. I mean, right now in the West, with Grambling's defensive struggles, it looks like Alcorn and PVs to like this. I would not be surprised that the winner of this weekend goes on to win the West. And then you look at the East, it's like, man, like outside of that Alcorn Jackson game at the end of the year, I don't see anyone in the SWAC who can catch Jackson left on that schedule right now.
Right. And that's that's got to be the heartbreak. And I guess that's what people have been screaming for the last 2 years or so. When you play that early one, right out the gate, you're looking for help, but you got to continue to keep pace yourself. And again, looking through the East, I just don't know who can help Jackson twice, because they got to have help twice.
Or have a three-way tie. But the problem is everyone, because the problem, like what would have to happen is you have to have a three-way tie, which means you would have to have 3 teams in that division finish with only 1 conference loss.
Yep.
I don't see, like, Jackson could finish with 1 conference loss. That wouldn't surprise me necessarily. But who in the hell would be the other team to only have, like, that means A&M would have to win out, which they played Jackson. So that
which would take Jackson out of it.
Yeah, which would take Jackson out of it. Valley can't get out of its own way against D2 teams. They're not going to finish with 1 loss in the division.
A&M and FAM still plays. That's
it's like the only team that would have a chance is State, because State doesn't have a conference loss, so they would have to beat FAMU this weekend, lose to Jackson, then all 3 of those teams win out, which is impossible because Bama State plays Jackson.
The Classic, and Bama State plays A&M in the Classic.
Yeah, so that's the problem, is like I just think right now, and then you look at the other side. I mean, the other side is just going to be pure chaos. I think there's 2 clear favorites, and then the other thing I'm looking for is Grambling's defense, does it just need to build chemistry, or is it Sundiata, Lewis, and they don't really have anybody else? Because it kind of looks like the second right now.
Oh, no doubt. And someone put in thing, I mean, that's right. FAM's got to mess it up themselves on the East. Over on the West, it's one of those things where, again, it's a week by week thing. This week will start to sort it out, but this is just really 1 week. And then it's a whole bunch of other stuff that comes in. But I like our chances because we play the big game, so to speak. We have them at home. I like our chances on that, in that situation, not just because I, work here, but having it at home, even if it was, reverse. To me, the home team in a lot of situations, you don't have to worry about travel. You actually get an extra day of work if you want it, or however you schedule your practices, as to where the visiting team's got to get on the bus at some point Friday to be there. Being at home, I think is a good thing. And it all comes down to this weekend, so to speak, to get it started, and we'll kind of go from there. So, as I say out at practice all the time to my guys, man, ain't nothing but a dice game.
Man, I'm with you, man. I'm excited to see. I'm telling you, like I said on the preview, the SWAC West race might be the most exciting race in all of college football in terms of who's going to come out of that division. And it's going to be pure chaos, and I can't wait for it. I know you don't want pure chaos, but as a fan, I know everyone's looking for the West to be crazy. But hey, you would like it all wrapped up.
I'm good with it, but I don't need chaos in my life. I don't.
He said, "Let there be chaos over there in the East, man.
Yeah,
let the East have."
Yeah, I'll watch it.
I love it, man. But guys, appreciate y'all tuning in. Like I said, these recaps will either come Sunday night Monday afternoon, depending on coach's schedule, depending on whether they're traveling, have late practice, all that kind of stuff. Preview Wednesday night or Thursday night. We'll kind of update you guys in the community tab on social media, man. Both our handles are down below for X or Twitter, whatever it's called, man. But make sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button. And for myself and my guy, Coach Fred, man, we'll see y'all later this week. But for right now, we out.